This boy had a fascination that would make him world famous, and it all had to do with this river. He was drawn to it, escaping the house every time he could. The boy disappeared at strange hours and would stay away for far too long. Eventually, his father decided to follow him, but when he found out what was in the water, he immediately called every authority. Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Harrison Marsh had always been a curious child. His parents, Jack and Emma Marsh, had grown accustomed to their son's endless, insatiable thirst for adventure. They encouraged his explorations, believing it would lead to a more fulfilling life for their son. Jack, a mechanic in the small town of Willow Grove, had always been the hands-on type, while Emma, a librarian, was well-versed in the world of books. Together, they instilled in Harrison a strong sense of curiosity and wonder from a young age. Harrison was no exception. He had spent countless days exploring the waterways of Willow Grove, climbing trees and skipping stones. However, there was one particular river that held a special place in his heart, a river that he would come to know as the source of the most extraordinary adventure he had ever embarked upon. It all began on a warm, sunny day in May. As he and Max followed a winding path through the woods, Harrison spotted a river that he had never seen before. It was smaller than the others he had explored, and it seemed to have a peculiar shimmer to its surface. Intrigued, Harrison approached the river. The boy dipped his fingers into the water, which felt unusually warm to the touch. They spent hours that day exploring the area around the river, but as the sun began to set, Harrison knew it was time to head home. That night, as he lay in bed, Harrison couldn't help but think about the river. The next morning, he woke up early, grabbed his backpack and Max, and set out once again to find the river. But this time, when they arrived at the river, something was different. The water was no longer warm, and the peculiar shimmer was gone. Harrison was puzzled by the change, but his curiosity got the better of him. As the day wore on, the river remained an enigma. That evening, as he returned home and back to his parents, Harrison's mind raced with questions. Over the next few weeks, Harrison visited the river as often as he could. Meanwhile, Jack and Emma began to notice their son's frequent trips to the river. Jack decided to broach the subject with his son one evening after dinner. "Harrison, your mom and I have noticed that you've been spending a lot of time down by the river lately. Is there something going on that you'd like to talk about?" Jack asked, trying to sound casual. Harrison hesitated for a moment, not wanting to reveal the true reason behind his visits. "Oh, I've just been hanging out with Max," he replied. "We like exploring the woods and playing by the water. It's a great way to pass time." Jack nodded, accepting his son's explanation, but not entirely convinced. "All right, just make sure you're home before dark and be careful, okay?" Harrison agreed. For a while, he managed to keep his visits to the river a secret, but soon he found himself sneaking out of the house at odd hours. One day, as Jack was working in his garage, he couldn't help but notice that Harrison was gone again. Jack was still concerned about his son's increasingly secretive behavior. Jack decided it was time to find out what was really happening at the river. The trail led Jack to the edge of the river just as the last light of day was fading. He hid behind a tree, waiting to see what his son was up to. He watched Harrison approach the water, his eyes scanning the surface with a mix of anticipation and wonder. Jack emerged from his hiding spot, making his presence known. Startled, Harrison turned to face his father, a look of guilt etched on his face. "Dad, I didn't know you were here," he stammered, trying to come up with an explanation for his secretive behavior. Jack raised a hand to silence his son, a sad smile on his face. "Harrison, I'm not here to scold you. I want to understand what's going on, and if there's something we need to face together, then that's what we'll do." Relieved, Harrison shared his observations with his father, explaining the strange changes in the river that he had witnessed over the past few months. As they stood there, the sun disappeared below the horizon, casting the forest into darkness. To their amazement, as the darkness enveloped them, the river began to glow again. It was a subtle, ethereal light that seemed to emanate from the water itself, casting an almost otherworldly glow upon the surrounding landscape. Harrison noticed something stirring beneath the surface. He pointed it out to his father, and together they watched as a salamander emerged from the water, its body shimmering with the same ethereal light as the river. They soon realized that the salamander was no ordinary creature. It seemed to have a special ability that immediately explained the strange glow in the water. It was an ability to harness sunlight and store it within its body, allowing it to extrude the light at will, creating the breathtaking glow that filled the river. As they observed the creature, they understood that it was the source of the river's mysterious allure and the reason behind its unpredictable changes. The father and son duo spent hours watching the salamander. However, as the night wore on, they couldn't shake the feeling that the salamander's gift of light came at a cost. However, they couldn't put their finger on it. In the days that followed, Jack and Harrison returned to the river every evening, observing the salamander and its mesmerizing light show. As they spent more time at the river, they noticed other changes in the environment, subtle shifts in the air and the landscape that seemed to hint at the cost of the salamander's gift. More and more plants started dying, and the air grew thicker. With each visit, they grew more aware of the delicate balance between the beauty of the glowing river and the price that it exacted from the world around it. One day, as they were watching the salamanders, they noticed a traveler approaching the river. The man seemed to be a biologist, judging by the equipment he carried. He introduced himself as Dr. Siegel and explained that he had been studying the unique salamanders for some time. Dr. Siegel revealed that the salamanders were not native to Willow Grove. They had inadvertently been brought to the area in his backpack after a research trip to a distant part of the world. The salamanders, thriving in their new environment, had begun to reproduce at an alarming rate. The enzymes they extracted from their bodies, while beautiful to look at, were highly toxic to the surrounding ecosystem. The contaminated water was killing off the plants and the fish, and if left unchecked, the entire area would eventually become uninhabitable. Harrison and Jack knew that they had to act. They called the newspapers and local authorities and also organized a meeting with Dr. Siegel to discuss a plan to save both the salamanders and the environment. The town's residents were alarmed by the news. The plan involved capturing as many of the salamanders as possible and relocating them to a contained environment where their natural enzymes would not pose a threat to the ecosystem. Harrison, Jack, and the residents of Willow Grove joined forces with Dr. Siegel and his team. They worked tirelessly, day and night, capturing salamanders and removing them from the river. After weeks of hard work, they had successfully captured the majority of the salamanders and relocated them to a safe and contained habitat. Dr. Siegel's team had also developed a solution to cleanse the river and restore it to its natural state. The river's shimmer disappeared, but its water was now clear and safe for the plants and fish to thrive once again. The people of Willow Grove celebrated their victory in saving their beloved town and the salamanders. Harrison and Jack were hailed as local heroes. In the years that followed, the bond between Harrison and Jack grew stronger than ever. Their shared adventure brought them closer together, and they continued to explore the natural wonders of Willow Grove, always with a newfound respect for the delicate balance of the environment. The salamanders, now safely contained in their new habitat, continued to be a source of fascination for the residents of Willow Grove. Dr. Siegel stayed in the town, studying the creatures and sharing his knowledge with the community. The town became a beacon of environmental awareness, and its people dedicated themselves to preserving and protecting the natural world around them. And though the river no longer glowed with the light of the salamanders, the memories of the magical nights spent by its banks would remain etched in the hearts and minds of Harrison, Jack, and the people of Willow Grove forever. And they would never forget, because that spot by the river was a place where they would memorialize what happened once a week for years to come.